Koji and Alex of Get Better Records. Would you all like to, I guess, briefly introduce yourselves and tell us what you do, both within the record label and as individuals?
I'll
Yes.
Who wants to go first?
yeah. I'm Alex. I started Get Better in 2009. And I also played drums in a band, Control Top. And outside of the label, I also practiced acupuncture at a clinic. Yeah, that's pretty much what's going on with me.
And I'm did you say you're in a band and stuff? I
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, just making sure. Um I'm Koji, and I started helping out with the label in like end of May last year. And yeah, I'm an artist and also go by Koji when I play music. And and I do A&R and like creative direction, but it's DIY. So Alex and I like we say these things, but we do a little bit of everything. Um, yeah, which we're like stoked about as people who are fans of music, bands, and making records to still be doing a little bit or a lot of everything is like really good, especially for me being like you know, I think the older I get, the more pronounced my neurodivergence like emerges. So like I just need a little bit of everything to be able to do anything at all. So happy to be here with Alex and with y'all. It's so nice to meet you.
Yeah,
Nice.
thank
Nice
you.
to meet you.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, Koji, do you like start something and then stop it and then go work on something else for like a little bit and then come back to that first thing?
Yeah, well, you know what? Now that I'm at the queer label, I can finally talk about all the astrological stuff that I want. And I just want everyone to know my Mars is in Aries, and that's totally the situation you're describing. But, my Venus is in Capricorn, which is why I can finish things.
We're gonna look at the website and all the artists.
Yes, yeah, I'll send you my chart later. Yeah.
I was gonna say, Alex, I've seen Control Top a couple of times. Y'all did that run with Devouring Mothers.
Yeah. Cool.
In SoCal, like
Yeah. Oh, that was so fun. That was like 3 years ago almost.
Yeah.
It was so wild.
The one in like the basement. That one place, like I feel like Laura like almost hit the ceiling with her head. Like it was like underground, like kind of thing.
Okay, sure. That was outside of LA, like in
It was in like Orange County area.
Yeah.
But I saw you at the Troubadour too.
Cool. Oh, that was a fun show. That was my first time at the Troubadour too. Yeah, that was a good couple of shows. Yeah, and like, that basement venue. I remember that.
It was weird.
Yeah.
I was like,
she's very tall, and we're all very short, so like we had no problem at all.
Yeah. I was like, nobody jump. Just like just chill. Yeah. It was a fun time.
Do you want to talk about how Get Better got started and how it kind of came to be?
Sure. Yeah. So my friend Nick and I started the label in 2009 when we were both living in Keene, New Hampshire. And then he left the label a year later, and then I obviously like continued it on. The label has shifted and had a lot of different shapes and forms. But then like we really shifted like 6 or 7 years ago. Kind of like when I was realizing like my own like gender stuff and coming out as non-binary. And that kind of like totally changed the label into being like a label that only focused on or mostly focused on queer, trans, non-binary artists. And that's kind of been, it hasn't really changed much since then, other than like kind of like the inner workings of the label, who's working at the label. But the bands and like the people that been working with since then have kind of, been queer, trans people in that community since then. Yeah, so it started off being just like a super DIY, like burn CDs with like plastic sleeves, like super like low budget label. And it's like very gradually shifted into more, vinyl releases. Now we have like a distributor and such like that. But yeah, I feel like we're like always changing and evolving and challenging ourselves to do more and and you know, be better.
Yeah. And that's one thing
Get
I like.
better.
Get better. Too.
Better.
Yeah.
To get better.
That's one thing I like too, is that like Get Better is like a music label, but you do see a lot of like mutual aid reposts and like fundraisers and things like that too. It's kind of a well-rounded label.
Yeah, that's definitely at the core of our ethos, is to, you know, make sure we're not just talking about music and supporting our community.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and that's how I got involved with the label, was through a compilation release called Sunday Someday that we put out last year. That was initially to like help fund my bandmate and like fellow artists on the label, Fla Monet. My friend Gabe was getting top
This one?
surgery.
Yeah.
Yes, the one.
I'm
Oh,
sorry,
you
it's not
Getting
it's not
it.
open.
Yeah, no,
but
that's
it's
awesome.
here, I have it.
Yeah, so like, no, you're an archivist. Yeah, so like we were making that record, and initially we wanted to fund Gabe's top surgery, and then like they have such an amazing community that they funded it before, you know, vinyl times stretched, as you know. Everyone says it on every podcast, I'm sure. And so it's like, or at least every day we talk to somebody that wants to talk to us about how long it takes to do vinyl now. But by the time it came out, it was funded and they had got their top surgery. So we helped fund acoustic treatment for the LGBT Center to create more access for like young adults and youth with like sensory needs. So that was like a really cool thing, which is something that I didn't know I even needed access to, something like that when I was a kid, because at that time, yeah, just living my false reality of cis like hetero-ness. So to be able to like just contribute to like an amazing resource in my hometown, to do it with like another hometown artist, and to like have been in community with one another and come into community with like Alex and the label and like deeper relationship, that sort of just like one thing led to another. Like since Gabe and I and like a lot of us are coming from like community care and organizing backgrounds, when vaccinations were like happening and we're getting our minds into the idea that we might be playing shows again, I just like asked Alex if it would be okay if I just asked all the bands to get together to talk about what it would look like to do this safely, knowing who COVID and just more broadly the state affects disproportionately. So what can we do, being this label, being this community, to just open the communication and try and you know, do this cultural work? It's not just music, that like we're visual artists, video artists, like involved with so many things, involved with, you know, mutual aid groups in our local towns and stuff. So we're like, how do we do this in a way that's just in great alignment and not so isolating? Because that's been the story of all of our lives. It's just dealing with like the headiness of this moment and that stress. And, you know, we really believe that collective power is the real power. And you know, you got to make the space. So that's what spoke to me, is like Alex's vocal radical practice and doing record making and just being a person, you know, was like such a beacon to me before I was even really ready to start telling people I was non-binary, you know. So here we are. It's like been a really beautiful ride.
That's awesome.
I love that.
I know, I love that. I feel like a lot of people went through that kind of realization during the pandemic. You know, you're by yourself, you're at home, you're kind of just there, you know, and it was a time for people to just kind of look at themselves and figure themselves out and grow. And I feel like there's been so many people just coming out of the pandemic a completely different person, but like in a good way.
Yeah, you're kind of forced to like look at yourself in the
You
mirror
have to
and be
sit there
like,
with your thoughts all day.
who am I? Exactly.
Yeah, I'm not going out tonight. Let me make a list.
Yeah, let me make another
Make a
list.
list.
All those things I want to change about myself.
I know that, Alex, like Get Better was a place for you to like house your initial project. So what like made you want to self-release in that way, as opposed to like peddling to another label?
Well, I think when we first started the label, it was like, you know, the only option was to do that.
Mhm.
Like, you know, we would like send our demo out to different places and never hear back. So yeah, at a certain point, we're just like, why don't we just I would just like, let's just do it. I've always been fascinated by, you know, labels and music and everything and the industry, how it works. And like, you know, like I knew nothing about any of this running a label when I started it, kind of just learned as we went and just like met a lot of great people who have like helped push it along. But yeah, it was kind of just mostly because it was the only option that there was. And like, you know, Control Top has, you know, gotten offers from other labels. We even signed to another label at one point before our record came out, and then they couldn't have our record out for that large In Grace tour, so they nicely let us out of the deal, and that's actually why Get Better ended up putting it out. But that was also in a time when I wasn't really focusing most of my time on the label. It was kind of like on the back burner of what I was doing. And then, but like since pandemic, that's been like, I've been working on the label every single day. There's like not a day where we're not doing something with the label. So it ended up being like a really good thing that we did that record and not having like the other label release it at that time. Yeah.
Right on. Oh yeah, you only had like cassette tapes at the time, right? On that tour,
yeah, I think what happened was probably those California shows were before the record was out, and then we actually had the record shipped to us like halfway through that tour when they were done. But yeah, we did make cassette tapes. I forgot about that. I don't even think I have one, but
our friend Riley does. She has
really?
She has a cassette tape.
I probably have one somewhere in some box. I was looking for one like a couple months ago, and I was like, why do I not have it? But yeah, that's kind of how it happened. Was just like, it was the only option. Yeah.
Yeah. If somebody else won't do it for you, you gotta, do it yourself.
Yeah. 100%. And do it your way, like do it how you want to do it on your own terms, control everything that you can at least. Yeah. Because
I'm sure like other labels, try to change people's images or what they write about and everything.
Yeah, just like all the bullshit, like and I won't use that example, but yeah, like we don't like on our label, like the artists have full creative control. Like we would never try and like we help guide them, but it's never like you must do this or must do that. Like we don't really have like we're like here to guide people, but not tell them what to do and help them like meet their vision.
You can see that too. I mean, Get Better picked up so much during the pandemic. Like it just blew up, and it has such great bands like Vile. Like their whole album was so good. Loudmouth, just amazing stuff. And Susie True, and I mean Potty Mouth, we love them. And we were sad that they decided to end, but they had such a great.
You got them all.
Just start pulling out all the records.
Yeah, Kanan always pulls out like whatever we're talking about. She has like an endless bag next to her of just stuff.
That's awesome.
So many records.
To pull out the cassette tape, but
Abby,
sorry, I was gonna say I have covert contracts over there, not over here.
And Abby from Potty Mouth actually works at the label now too. They do all of our like Instagram. So like I don't run the social media, or at least the Instagram anymore. That's all Abby.
Oh, cool.
Like I don't know if you noticed like a shift in our graphics on social media, but that's all Abby. They kind of do all of our Instagram stuff and all that behind the scenes stuff that just got too much for me to do on my own. So very thankful for that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Taking pictures of records on the table, like a precariously perched.
Oh, right. Yeah. Like Koji and I have a big photo shoot to do with all of the records. Just we're taking photos and photos and photos of everything that we have. But
it's gonna be Koji like laying there with the records, and you'll be suspended from the ceiling, just aerial view. You can write that down.
Totally.
That'd be great.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, Get Better does have like that family feel. You see just how much people love being on the label and sharing their music with everyone, and allowing themselves to be themselves, because you don't see that with other labels.
Right. I think that's what's so special about the label, and something that Koji's really helped with too is like, we have met with have like label wide Zoom meetings to talk about, Delta when it came out, like Omicron when it came out, and like how everyone's feeling. Yeah, Koji, I don't know if you want to talk more about that, but that was like a huge thing that Koji helped build within the label, was that level of like family vibes.
Yeah, I mean, we have like about I think we're working on like of records that just came out or will come out, like 20 plus, like maybe a couple dozen, and then we have like maybe 3 dozen active artists.
Mhm.
And it's like a lot of teams, a lot of different communities like around the world. And we're just trying to again, like create the space, like Get Better is a space that didn't exist and it needs to exist, and I think like within the label, how we practice is just so important to like interrogate how we're meeting each other. So that's something we're always thinking about, is like, what's the information in our experience that's been gatekept or mystified, and how can we just like shine a light on the things that are, scary for like developing bands or even bands that have been doing it for like a long time. How can we share wisdom, because we need each other's eyes to see. So I think there's like, moreover than just like figuring out what goes on like a COVID rider to advance a tour or a show, or like which promoters are like COVID affirmative and safe, because like a lot, there different artists have different needs, and some folks are disabled, or they're like, everybody in our community has friends and family differently affected by the pandemic, differently affected by the state, so like how can we just kind of name our different truths and see what's in there to work with. And that's powerful practice to get together. And I think the old version of the industry, or the industry that we feel like in a way we're insurgent to, is really about isolating the artist.
Mhm.
There's so many case studies about different deals and like horror stories about like what artists or even people at the label have gone through on the label side,
Yeah.
just generally speaking about the industry. So yeah, like we want to disrupt those cycles and give record making a different shape. And that feels really good. Like it feels really affirming to just have artist meetings, to regularly meet, to like have kind of consistency to like relationships in a pandemic. I just definitely feel grounded in a way as I practice music, as I practice in community, that like I never had before. And music's like the thing that I know. Like I started playing shows when I was like 12 and started promoting shows when I was 13, and I'm like turning 35 pretty soon. It's like you go a whole lifetime of music, and then I get to Get Better. I'm like, this is what I was imagining when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So that's a really good knowingness too. And you just feel that. And I think that like childlike joy that you can still sometimes get to, even though it's like, you rack up some kind of traumatic mileage when you like are in music so long. But to like get here and be like, this is the place, that's like such a gift, especially in, times like these. So,
Yeah. It's pretty crazy. And you see that too on social media. Like we love seeing the bands interact with each other and, congratulate each other on new music, or, shows coming up, promoting other shows, for other bands. And
It's
it is
not
really
competitive.
good. Yeah. Because you don't see that with other labels sometimes, with like other bands. You hear of like bands not liking each other, or, questioning why this band's on the label, or, it's good to see a label that is really, family oriented and well rounded.
Yeah. Thanks for saying that.
Yeah, it's nice to hear that perspective, like from the outside of the label, because yeah, I mean, that's like what we want, that supportive community. Like no one, like, yeah, like not people, like not to feel in competition with each other, like they're fighting for our time or something, or the spotlight. We try to give everyone, our full attention when we're working on a release with them. And it's so nice to see people like propping each other up.
Yeah.
That's like one of the best things I think about the label, is all that, all that care.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, we know we're going to make mistakes, and we're going to, how like, we're always thinking about how we can turn towards conflict and turn towards like our mistakes or failures, however we want to like, or whatever speed bumps when we're just having a bad day, like what's in there to work with. and what can we like take from it and just like deepen our understanding, because it's we only have a finite time to be here. And for me, like, I recognize music's like a thing much older than the state. So it's like, in a way, like this like cosmic ancestral work to like think in a way that's like, how can we honor that longer tradition of music, because it is this essential thing to like human life, and it is a way that we not just connect to each other as humans, but to like to the land. And if it, on as we here we are putting out records, playing shows on stolen land, like, and we're imagining a liberated world. Well, like, how can we do the little things and keep evolving over time that put us in better and hopefully one day right relationship with the lands, with native people, with each other? And that's, because the shape of music before all that gatekeeping, that the idea, the institution of the label or the institution of the artist, as if we're not all in collaboration with one another, as if it's not our whole scenes and our communities making these records. So it has a band name on the cover, but it's in such a spirit of co-creation that anything gets done. It's actually magic, So you look at the records, you hold it up, I'm like, wow, that's like, you're holding up a magical thing, because it's almost impossible that it exists at all.
Yeah.
So we're just trying to like walk with that knowingness. And so every day is like pretty precious, is like very exciting, and like we find presence. And that's what the fucking state, the police state, and prison industrial complex, like borders, that's what's robbed from us, is presence, that presence in relationship with one another. So yeah, it's like we do this, and it's nice to hear you say that it's cool that the bands like each other, because we're like, this feels right to us. Do people get it? Like, I don't know.
It's so weird, like, hearing it from the outside, because you're putting this work and you don't know if it's being effective or people are seeing it the way you see it.
Yeah. So that's why you have to be happy with it when you put it out there into the world.
Yeah.
Create that magic.
Well, I love, I can, from my point of view too, I just want to like celebrate what you're doing, and like the kind of like the joy in what y'all do is really like special to me. And I think I remember when like y'all followed my account, and I'm so used to hearing like a turfy riot girl thing, and like being AMAB and non-binary, it was just like, oh cool, like I'm a girl like them. Like I was just like sick, like, you know what I mean? Like that meant a lot to me. And I was like, you're just doing, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm just like, there's you live your life expecting this trans violence, and like, I just don't feel like presenting another way. I just don't care. But it like, so I think in a way, because I perform queerness the way that I do, it meant a lot that like anybody accepts me, which that's what I keep finding out as I meet people through Get Better, is like, oh, people accept me. And I had, that was like a struggle, or like I would have invited people in, not come out, or like what I would have told somebody sooner if I didn't have a music career that I feel like boxed me into my gender.
Yeah.
I was so violently racialized in the first place. I was like, I can't add another thing. I didn't have that support. So the fact that like we're all connecting, and that you're out here connecting people, that's beautiful. So thank you for what you do,
But I did think it was interesting the way you said, like, the way that you were presenting queerness the way that you want to, as opposed to what people like expect, which is really interesting, because people are always like, oh, you don't look this way, or you don't dress this way, and they have like this like strange idea of what queerness is like supposed to be.
Yeah, like a major unlearning for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And times have changed so much. Like even 5 years ago is not, like, it's not that long in retrospect, but the things we know now aren't what we knew back then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just, growing, getting better.
Yeah. And like I'm so inspired by like kids in high school and even younger.
Oh yeah.
Just like as I'm meeting more and more like trans youth, I'm just like, how did you have the support, or what did you see that allowed you to get there? Because when I was in fourth grade, the first organizing I ever did was a petition to like make the dress code and the punishment code gender neutral, because they used to punish us by gender. So it's like
Mhm.
boys get this punishment, girls get that. And I never felt, I always thought it was like a race thing, but I was like, but that's not quite it, you know? And it was like, it was definitely the gender thing, but I didn't have language for that. Some of these like people that I meet like fucking knew in elementary school. And I was like, I did too, but it wasn't in my vicinity. I couldn't reach for any language to describe my experience. Um, so yeah, I'm like, I love that the internet has like put this shit on light speed.
Oh yeah.
Like, let's absolutely abolish the binary. Like, let's get to all the type of beautiful expressions and and beautiful presence that is available to us. Like, it's an abundance thing, right? We just got to tap in. Well, I'm so glad some of us are using the tools to like, get there ourselves and like help others do the same,
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is so sweet. I love this. Like, we're just like loving each other. It's just very harmonious.
We did just
You know.
see Koji, your little quote from the Spin article about Spotify. You wanna talk about that a little
Yeah.
bit?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess like in a meeting, Alex was like, "Hey, we got asked to respond to this podcast guy." And I didn't realize how upset I was about just generally the discourse.
Hmm.
I think with good reason, that guy and that platform are having like this big moment.
Yeah.
I think it's to distract us from like a lot of other things. And in all that discourse, while people are talking about vaccination and very rightfully talking about this dude's racism and hiding behind free speech and comedy, to be able to like so freely, you know, say what he wants to say without any real recognition of like power. Cause that's, I mean, there's a lot of things wrong with just the whole shape of that dude's career. But
Mhm.
anyway, I just didn't realize how upset I was that people weren't talking about the transphobia and eugenics. And like, in a way, I have to be like sort of coded to point towards white supremacy and patriarchy. You say these words that people get really triggered by, that like don't agree that those are problems.
Hmm.
So like, how could I gesture towards that and kind of name our truth as like a community that, like we can debate and whatnot about like, I'm responding to the person because they're asking us to respond
Hmm.
to that whole situation. So Neil Young leaving, Joni leaving for Amazon, who is doing AWS cloud services for ICE, when like both of them regularly wear native regalia, like native clothing, and they're going to a place that like, publicly supports the border, And what can we do where Spotify is the number one marketplace and we're talking about royalties and all of that, when like the CEO is giving $100 million to AI for like military use.
Yeah.
And we as cultural workers are trying to survive, pay rent, have health insurance, like literally survive the state. And then this guy, to add insult to injury, is advocating for attitudes that will kill us, that get us killed at home, on the streets, in our workplaces, that make it unsafe everywhere. So I just felt like a little bit of like, it was very activating to be like, these people can talk about fucking royalties
Hmm.
and the degradation of music. And I'm not hearing Joni or Neil or any big people covering this shit say anything about trans lives, about Black trans lives, Native trans lives, people, all trans people, but all the people that are affected the most and by, yeah, by society. It's just like, again, we spend our days imagining a liberated world, like we truly do. It's not just music. So yeah, just to see the zeitgeist kind of pull in that direction, and once again there'd be this huge erasure of trans people, it didn't sit right with me. So I said what I said. Just like you, I found out that a lot of people were responding to all these things, not the content of what I was saying about, just naming that privilege and power dynamic and the transphobia and eugenics, because eugenics shaped my life. I'm Filipino Okinawan, like my family and Japanese, and my family came through like via Hawaii, which is more stolen land. But like imperialism, colonialism shaped migration from my ancestors. It landed us in Hawaii, which wouldn't become a state because they didn't want the eugenics at the time were shaping immigration policy and the proportions of different races that could be in the country. And the first Filipinos to really be brought to Turtle Island, some were brought here for the World's Fair in human zoos because we're subhuman. So for me to hear those Joe Rogan words when this guy is on fucking testosterone saying that trans people shouldn't have access to hormone therapy because it's going to cause the downfall of society, like that is fucking eugenics, and that's violently transphobic. And I was like, and who does that affect the most? Black, brown, and Native people. And like we have to, especially us, like doing these records and trying to survive the state while being settlers on stolen land, like we have to think about ways again to like be in right relationship. So I said what I said, and like people came at me being like, why don't you delete Spotify? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And I was like, nobody affirming me that transphobia exists. And for a lot of us, like that's just like haunting, because we are seeing ghosts, like because we're very aware of like the violence that happens all the time, every day, to not just us but all our friends and family. So and being the queer trans label, a lot of people very beautifully share a lot of their lives with us, and we know just a little bit of the shape of that violence in people's lives. So again, what can we do? It's the least I could say, and we're the only label to respond. And it's dangerous for us because we know there's people surveilling. I've been hacked and doxxed and blackmailed by Nazis. Like Nazis used to come to every show in my scene, and I'm like, who's out here listening to this shit? It's fucking cops, teachers, your uncle. Like it's huge. And it's not about Spotify too, like just as the publisher. If that guy's not on Spotify, he's bigger. So I'm just thinking, in the first place, how can we just like get people calling out transphobia when it is occurring? I can't even think about royalties. I can't even think about playlists. I'm really caring about like my siblings, my elders, young people who are trans, people of color. So anyway, that's a long-winded way of just saying I said what I said, and I don't regret it. When I first found out about Get Better, and I was like, a record label posts about Palestine. You know what I mean? And you find out Alex is Jewish, and I'm like, what? I had not seen that before. And I haven't seen it. Like my favorite label, one of my favorite labels growing up was Discord, and I loved all the mutual aid and stuff in DC that was happening. And to like a different degree, some of the other labels in the 90s and 2000s that were doing like kind of mutual aid type stuff and awareness type things. But I love that like Get Better was like saying some hard shit that like other people stay away from, because you stand something to lose. You forget how neoliberal the rest of the industry is. So I just love that Alex was vocal from the get, and was willing to also like grow in public. And like we need our community, like our different like pockets of community, like our different pods, like we just need to keep interconnection and like not pedestaling. So like not being above critique, not being above anybody,
Just understanding we're all trying to do our best and learn and grow. And I mean, it's hard putting yourself out there and voicing your opinions on these issues, because it does set you up to be targeted and bullied and attacked and all these things. But when you're surrounded by a community who also believes that stuff and supports it, you don't get as much hate, or you don't feel like you get as much hate. Like there's been things that we post that were like, are you sure? Like this is gonna might be bad, and then we post
this
it.
is ballsy.
Yeah, but like people support it, and it's
Yeah.
great to see because you really cultivate your own audience, and I think that's what Get Better has done too.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because I feel like the label, like on like our like posts, it used to be like heavily like 50% music, 50% political, but then we kind of like shifted a little bit because we're like, we can't, like, obviously we like say what we believe in and talk about important things, but we also like are here for our artists too. And we can't let like, we don't want to hurt our artists as well. Like kind of like the Spotify stuff, like Spotify prides themselves on how in tune they are with like who's saying what about them everywhere. So we're like, we can't like come at them hard on social media or anything because they'll like hurt our artists and already push them down further down the algorithm. So we just like, came at it from like a different angle, like was like, so like what Koji said, that quote. So it's like a definite balance, but yeah, I feel like people who know us know what we are about at this point. And we're never going to stop, posting about the things we post about, but yeah, it is a interesting balance for sure.
Like speaking on like performative, like on the topic of performativity, like do other like brands and just whoever come to you in like the month of like Pride Month, June or whatever, and try to do collaborations like on a strictly like performative level?
Yeah. And you know what? I think a couple of years ago, I probably would have declined everything out of principle. But now we're kind of like, how can we just milk it for everything they're going to give us? Like,
I love that.
Seriously.
Like,
no, but
yeah.
not. Sorry, keep going, Alex. Sorry.
No, like, I guess I can name it without naming it. One of the biggest search engines there are was talking to us, and we like did a whole interview process. We're gonna hear back from them about doing a Pride Month feature with them. And we had the conversation, like, should we not do this? Like but ultimately, yes, we should, because we're our artists, the people that need to be, out there. And like, if it's not us, what are they gonna do? Go to like a cis-owned label who has like a couple queer artists and hit them up and they'll get all that stuff. So it's like not swallowing pride, but it's like, how can we use this to our advantage without crossing a line, yeah.
I like how you flip that.
I think it's a question of capacity building, but not like, so there's a difference, because in Philadelphia there is a blue line that runs through the rainbow flag, and that's where we are right now. You know what I mean? Like that blue line through the like Philadelphia Pride posts Blue Lives Matter type shit.
Jesus.
That's who runs our pride. It's not just so corporatized, it's militarized against like the people here. And you saw what happened on the freeway. You know what I mean? I don't know if everybody remembers like the kettling and tear gassing on the 676, but you saw what happened. So like, we're not cooperating with like corporate pride in like this normalizing like police violence sort of way. But for us, we're recognizing that like rainbow capitalism is going to give us certain attention. So it's like parsing through the different asks and being like, what can actually give material relief to our artists and expand a reach, and how can we think strategically, knowing that anything we do in capitalism is complicit, and that's something we have to like work really hard in and be intentional and practice in a way that makes sense for us, and hopefully continue to educate ourselves, because we know doing capitalism is inherently fucked up. It's there's no way around it. Having an internet bill and like cell phones or even music gear with circuit boards. There's conflict minerals, you know, we're somehow working with like paying companies that have military and police contracts. Like it's so integrated. It's also like on us to like, again, like consistently struggle against it. You know, that's the thing is like we're trying to